already told you in a lot of my videos that I don't like this microphone, but I currently don't have any choice. So I guess we're using it today. So hey! All right. Guys, today I will be tackling something completely different. It's a technical, what do you call this? Dude, I can do ASMRs here. Okay, the hell am I doing? So let us get to the point, ladies and gentlemen, shall we? But first, logo reveal. Okay, so this one is about creating a freelancing contract. I'm not going to go into the depths of despair in terms of creating a contract because I'm not an expert at it, but I do want to take note of the top 3 things that what we call can't do without elements of a freelancer contract, because this is super important. We are talking about how we can protect ourselves as freelancers, especially here in the Philippines, wherein we do not have freelancing laws. I mean, we do have, but I don't even know if it's valid for foreign clients, because there are so many instances wherein we live in a completely different era wherein we talk to other people in a different country, and there is no way for us to kind of like go in their country, talk to their government and be like, hey, can you like sue that person because that person has done something wrong to me? So it's a little bit complicated. You know, there's a lot of complications. I'm not sure, please correct me if I'm wrong, if we already have some sort of like systems wherein we can do that. But in my case, the way I know about how these things work is that suing is country per country, right? It's not, or inter-country. That's not inter-country, but I don't know. But like, you can sue someone if that person is still within the country. That's why, you know, like in a lot of cases, there are people that have been murdering other people and like they're fly to other countries. Alrighty, so let's talk about the can't do without properties of a freelancer contract. Sorry, I'm so talkative, right? Like so talkative. That's like, right. So firstly, one of the things that I'd like to emphasize when you are creating your contract, a lot of people just skip this part for no reason at all. I have no idea. It's like, you know, we see an invoice and it's about to get paid and we get very happy, but we oftentimes forget that a contract, number one, primarily, it has to have a start date and an end date. So I don't know why there are so many freelancers out there that do not even put a start date and an end date in their contract. It's just like a date of when the contract was signed and then that's it. Like, you have to really ensure that there's a start date and an end date in the contract, apart from the dates when that contract was made and the date when you have signed that contract. So technically there will be 4 separate dates that is written in the contract, and that is super specific because the tendency is if you do not put a start date and an end date in the contract, what happens is there are projects that are only supposedly going to be taking like a week, or let's say at the very least a project can take 3 days, but because you do not have an end date on the contract, the client will start procrastinating. I'm not saying that all clients are like this, but you know, there are some clients that are like that, wherein they would procrastinate in sending you assets or procrastinate in replying to your emails wherein you are sending proofs and stuff for revision. So for example, I created a book cover for a specific author. I emailed that author the very first draft or the very first version of that book cover. The client took like forever to reply, and so it extends a specific project transaction. So there are so many people like myself, I want to come clean on this one, because there are a lot of cases wherein I just have the invoice paid and, you know, like I'm already paid for it. I can let go of everything else, not considering the time I am supposed to spend on a specific project, not considering that a specific project can actually go up to 2 years. this is from my experience, ladies and gentlemen, there was a project, a book cover project that I could easily make in a week, and it has been extended for 2 years because I did not put an end date on the contract. And some clients rely on, oh my God, I'm so busy, I can't really get back to you and whatnot. Like, no, you have to be definitely firm on this one because the project can really take forever sometimes, right? So the end date, especially the end date, ladies and gentlemen, it's super important because that's when it's like, hey, we're only going to be working together in the specific project up until this date. And then if we go beyond that one, then I'm going to charge you a specific fee for that because you are taking up space in my booking calendar. That's what it is. Now, with the start date, there are so many people that are starting or putting start dates when the invoice is paid. I don't do this as a practice because lesson learned, when the invoice is paid, a lot of times the client also doesn't give a flying kick, flying kick, but like flying F, you know what I mean? Like we can't curse on social media videos. So what you need to do when you are creating a start date is ensure that the start date is a day after everything has been accomplished by the client. Okay, so what are these things that this client has to accomplish? Number one, invoice. Course, right? Like the 50% down payment or whatever percentage of the total project price are you going to be asking for a down payment. There are freelancers that are asking for 50%, 60, 75, whatever that is. Do your thing. That's a down payment, right? Invoice, and then the contract has to be signed and accomplished. Do not even start the project if it hasn't been signed and accomplished. Next one is the assets that you will be requiring your client so you can create or get or finish that specific project. So what are these assets? It really depends on the service that you're offering. So for example, with a website design, that's a specific project with too many assets that you will be requiring your client. For example, pictures, text for the website, logo, branding guidelines, yada, 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 like whatever that is. Those are the assets that you need so that you can create a website that is in line with their brand, or, like you could design a website within the things that they want to show up in that website. So there's that. Those are the assets that you will be requiring or getting from your clients. And then also when it comes to writing projects, a few things that you might be considering when you are getting a project from them is like just the brand Bible, their mission, vision statement, or whatever that is, so that you would be in line when you are writing something. When you're writing something for them, you will be in line with their brand, what they stand for, what they believe in, their advocacies, yada, 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 yada. So those are kind of like the assets that you will be requiring your client to accomplish a project. And a lot of times, there will always be clients that will be procrastinating on these things. They would be paying the invoice, signing the contract, and be like, okay, I'll get back to you next week for the things that you will be needing for my website, like the photos and logos and the text and all that kind of stuff. I'll get them for you next week. Next week passes, you did not receive anything from the client. So what I do is I put a start date. So the start date is kind of like my estimate or my guesstimate, basically, as to when that client can give me all the assets considered. So it's like giving the client also a deadline. So the start date is the deadline for the client to give you everything you need in order to start the project. And that's something that you also need to explain to the client yourself. So for example, when you are asking for a start date, you can say, hey client, when do you think can you send me all the assets considered, invoice, contract, all the assets, yada yada. And then the client would say, okay, I'll get that to you Thursday next week. So you can put the start date one day after that, which is Friday next week. So that's the start date that you're going to put. Of course, you're not just going to put Friday next week, right? Like the exact date, March 22, 2021, something, right? So that's the start date. And the end date, of course, is the reasonable turnaround time that you have agreed upon, like of course, that will be mostly up to you, right? Because you're like, how many days considered do I need to finish this entire project? You're the one who has to decide for that. And you can say, more or less, I'll be able to finish this project within a week. So that's your end date, right? And make sure that you have also agreed, you've also told that to your client, because the end date and the start date has to be dates that both of you have agreed upon, so that you both know it's like, hey, our project is just going to be within these dates, and that's it. Okay. Alrighty. That's just the first one of like creating a really good freelancer contract. Okay. Second one is termination. So when things are not working out right, like when you are in a relationship and you're like dating this guy for 6 months, and then later on in the 7th month he turns psycho and you're like, so that's when you need a termination section for your contract. Working relationship wise, most especially, because there are clients wherein you work with them and you realize later on, you're like, oh god, like she's not the right client for me. I don't like working with her. She's too demanding. She doesn't let me sleep, like unreasonable stuff. Okay. And guys, when I'm talking about unreasonable, like really make sure that it is unreasonable before you terminate the contract. Not just, there are so many of us that are super sensitive and then like, this client has been asking for samples of my work. Like, I'm like, yeah, that's like protocol, like don't be overly sensitive. Okay. Just make sure that it's unreasonable. Like, for example, in my experience, this client does not let me sleep and take a break because she thinks that I was a full-time VA, and like I wasn't. I was just a graphic designer of hers, paid by the hour, and I wasn't allowed to like take a nap or like take a break. Like I took a nap the whole afternoon, and she's like, oh, you took a nap? I didn't even know. Like she was like informatively telling me that I should be there, with her, communicating with her via WhatsApp rather, and that I have to let her know that I'm still alive, that kind of stuff. So I thought that was unreasonable, especially that I told her initially in the contract in itself that I was a freelancer. So there's that kind of things like that. But there are also some things that you just need to communicate well with your client. You don't immediately need to terminate the contract, right? So these are some of the things that you need to gauge by yourself. Some decisions in freelancing we need to make for ourselves, and we cannot rely on other people to tell us like, hey, do you think this is like the proper time to terminate a contract? Like that's within your decision, basically. And do not be afraid to make the wrong decisions, because your wrong decisions are actually what's going to keep you moving forward and get you skin in the game, basically. So there, termination section in a contract is super important, because like what I said, if a working relationship is not turning out right for both of you, then you have the option to end the working relationship. And what are the things that needs to be done in order to officially end that working relationship? Okay, so what am I talking about? That means, for example, you have already worked on a book cover or design, or you have already wrote some things or done some things for this specific client. And in the middle of the project transaction, it didn't really turn out well. Okay. And you're like, oh God, this is so frustrating. It's already been 6 months and I'm still working for this client. This is so unreasonable. I want to end this working relationship already. Now, what are the things that needs to be done? So in that case, the things that you have done for your client already, does that client get to keep that? Right? So in design, you have already designed a bunch of things for that client. Is she going to keep that? Is the client going to be keeping that? Are you going to be keeping that? Would there be kind of like a kill fee? Right? Kill fee meaning if you have already done certain efforts for the project and you both decided that this is not going to work out, is the client going to be paying you extra for the kill fee, or should you just be keeping the down payment and making it non-refundable? These things, like what is going to happen? Like if worst case scenario, what is going to happen after we decided that this is not going to work out? Okay, and this is something that both of you need to agree upon, not because you don't trust your client, but because you are just preparing yourself, you know, making sure that there are precautionary measures that needs to be done. Okay, so that's what you need to do in the termination section. It's like, just be very specific there. Like, if the working relationship is not going to turn out, here are the things that you need to take note of. Number one, right? I will not be refunding the down payment that you have paid me, and this will serve as a kill fee, period. Number two, you will be keeping some of the project assets that you deem very necessary. Only 5 pieces of this and this and this and this, and that's what you get to keep. Number three, you know, like, that's what you can put in there as part of the termination section. Okay, and failure to comply, or what are the possible consequences if this is not supplied in your contract? Well, worst case scenario, that person is going to put like a horrible review. You know, you just stick your guts and like finish the whole entire project, and you don't have any choice because you have agreed on that very project, which is not cool. You know, like, if you're not happy with that person, if you're not happy with how the relationship is working out, why would you still stay there? You know, hashtag relationship goals. But yeah, if things are not working out well, you really need to have this termination section, just so you could be careful about what's gonna happen. Again, it's not that you don't trust the client, it's just that you are using precautionary measures to protect yourself and your time. Okay, there you have it. Third one is detailed deliverables. Why is that so hard to pronounce? Deliverables. Detailed deliverables is a list of items that you are supposed to be delivering to your client at the end of the project transaction. And I say detailed because there are so many people that be like, one book cover for $250, one social media template for $300. Like, how many images are there in that social media template? What's the format of that social media template? How many weeks are you going to be working for this client? You know, put in the deliverables, like the quantity, the quality, the type file, how many of those, right? When are you supposed to submit them all? The final draft, you know, that kind of, like, you have to be super detailed, because the possible consequence if that's not supplied is your client can ask you more than what you agreed on, right? There are so many horror stories that are like that, wherein the only thing that you both agreed on is like the JPEG image of a social media graphic, and then here comes the client asking you for the resource file of wherever software you made that social media graphic from. Like, oh, you gotta send me the resource file, the .ai format, so I can use this, because, you know, I'm just trying to hitch on you, because like the AI format, like it's already a social media template, and I can repurpose it just by paying you once, like something like that, you know. Like, these things, my friends, although these clients mean well, sometimes they don't even know that you could actually license that. In terms of resource files, even if it's .ai, .pst, .indd, whatever that is, whatever software you're designing something from, these resource files, you can actually license them. For writers out there, the .docs file, the spreadsheet, whatever that is, you can license it. Anything that they can open in their own device and they can edit it for themselves, you can license that, because you should have an agreement wherein you are putting all this service or digital service labor, and then it's up for them if they want to use you again, right? Because definitely giving them their resource files would mean they're not going to hire you again. And that would also mean you're not getting the chance of having a recurring income. Okay, so that's bad for your business. So it's up to you if you're going to be licensing the resource files or giving it away for free. I have done that way too many times, wherein I just gave the resource files for free. Especially for designers out there, you are actually in risk for copyright infringement, because the fonts, the whatever elements there are in a design, you are in the verge for that, you know? Like if your client is using that resource file and mass producing it, you could get sued for that as the designer. So you have to be extremely careful to whom you are giving these resource files to, or if you're licensing them, you know, that kind of stuff. So there you have it. Just make sure that in your detailed deliverables section, you're super specific as to what format, how many, you know, the things that you have agreed upon. And then if the person wants to get the resource file, you charge extra for it, and make sure that for designers, all images are flattened. Fonts are taken out. Like, you don't send them the fonts because you bought the font license for yourself. Don't do that. For writers, make sure that it's docs file, and you have to send it to them, you know, like no watermarks, etc., whatnot. I mean, for writers, it's super easy to send that. But there you have it. Whatever resource file that you are going to be sending, just make sure that fonts and elements and whatever that is, it's all flattened so that it cannot be mass produced. Okay? Because there's also a different thing or license thing for that one. Okay? So there, again, if you will be sending you the resource file, it's bad for your business. It takes out the possibilities of recurring income. So it's up to you if you're going to give it for free or charge for it. Okay, so there you have it. Those are top 3 things that I feel you can't do without in terms of freelancer contract. How long is this? Oh my God, 23 minutes. Alrighty, so I'm going to end this here, and thank you so much. I'm guessing I will be giving you a free contract template at the end of the video or in the description somewhere. Just check it out. And if you haven't subscribed, subscribe if you want more videos like this. And I'll see you in the next video. Bye.